Khazarian mafia attempts to start World War III stopped in Syria and in North Korea. Now that Donald Trump showed his true colors as a Zionist, Khazarian mafia, sleeper agent, he is becoming increasingly isolated and is guilty of provable war crimes. Pentagon, CIA, and other sources agree. Trump is toast. With how a CIA source described the situation, Trump has been pushed by his Zionist handlers into trying to start World War III because these religious fanatics still think they are somehow going to start a war between Gog and Magog, kill 90% of humanity and enslave the rest. To this end, Trump ordered an attack on Syria air base where Russian personnel were stationed. That is also why Trump tried to start a war with nuclear-armed North Korea last week. The situation with North Korea was designed by Zionists to provoke the ultra-macho antagonist North Korea's Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump into a situation where neither man could back down without losing face. The North Koreans said they had a right to test missiles, etc. anytime they want, especially on the 105th anniversary of the birth of the country's founding father, Kim Il-sung. Trump said, "If you do that, we will attack." So, a face-saving solution was engineered with the missiles that blew up immediately after launching. The North Koreans were able to claim they went ahead and did the test despite Trump's threats. The Zionists were able to hint they sabotaged the test with unspecified secret weapons. The important point being that Zionist attempts to start World War III failed yet again and will continue to fail. These provocations are just one sign there is something undeniably dysfunctional going on with the Trump presidency. A few weeks ago, Trump was invoking President Andrew Jackson and hinting about nationalizing the Federal Reserve Board. Now he's saying FRB Chief Janet Yellen can have another term in office. He also turned from provoking the Chinese and accusing them of being currency manipulators to brazenly sucking up to them and denying they manipulate their currency. These flip-flops may be connected to the arrival of yet another bankruptcy deadline for United States corporate government. In this case, the expected bankruptcy of the U.S. corporation Puerto Rico subsidiary on May 1st. Despite efforts to paint this as a municipal bond-type problem, this could trigger a domino effect that finally takes down Zionist Central in Washington, D.C. Sources close to the Japanese emperor say the arrival in Tokyo this week of P2 Freemason Lodge and Vatican representative U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, as well as long-term registrar agent and U.S. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, was for the purpose of trying to get money from Japan to kick the can down the road yet again for the U.S. corporation. There is also a group calling itself the Goldman family that is trying to convince the emperor to either cash fake bonds with astronomical numbers on them or else place their man Ichiro Ozawa as Prime Minister of Japan, the sources say. Neither of these things is going to happen, the sources add. While it is certain the Republic of the United States of America will get continued support from the rest of the world, the Zionist-owned U.S. corporation will not. The entire planet is sick and tired of their antisocial and criminal behavior. The signs of this are everywhere to be seen now. Getting back to Donald Trump, last week after trying to start World War III, he was forced to say, "We are not going into Syria." He has also been denied a meeting with the Pope during the G7 meeting in Sicily scheduled for May 26 and 27th, a sure sign he's isolated, Pentagon sources say. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was also recently denied a meeting with the Pope, yet again exposed himself as a Zionist slave last week when he talked about North Korea sending Syrian missiles to Japan. Israel has been exposed as behind the false flag Syria-Syrian attack, along with former CIA boss John Brennan, John McCain, H.R. McMaster, working for the Saudi and Israeli masters, Pentagon sources note. Zionist bad boy Jared Kushner may be under counter-intel investigations for his ties to Bibi. Benjamin Netanyahu, Russia, George Soros, Goldman Sachs, Hayes Kissinger, and Rupert Murdoch, the sources add. This article about Trump's Zionist handler Kushner shows his real agenda. Notes Kirshner's involvement with the college-based Chaba was a particularly important part of his resume building, and that the Chaba Lubavitch sect is an extremely radical organization that espouses dogmatic end-time prophecies that are overwhelmingly favorable to the Jewish race. Kirshner is also almost certainly a Zionist because why else would be paid 3 times the previous price to buy a building with the address 666? Japanese military intelligence, for their part, say the real source of the problem is the Zionist-controlled CSIS think tank in Georgetown University and suggest taking out that institution as a shortcut to ending war terrorism. For now, though, Goldman Sachs is one of that being targeted, Pentagon sources say, noting that Goldman made a huge bet so it could rake in profits for higher oil prices and got busted with no invasions of Syria. Trump is also guilty of war crimes for his attack on Syria since he attacked a sovereign nation without congressional approval or approval of the United Nations. Violating the War Powers Act is an impeachable offense, CIA sources note. The pretext for this illegal attack, a supposed sarin attack by the Syrian government, has now been fully exposed as a complete fabrication. An interview with Syrian President Bashar Assad by the French AFP newswire was widely quoted in corporate media outlets like CNN, Bloomberg, Reuters, etc., and makes clear even to the few remaining Zionist Kool-Aid drinkers out there that the entire Daesh, Syrian terrorism, etc. business is run by the Western powers. The West was not supposed to represent perpetual war, false flag attacks, fake news, terrorism, drug dealing, etc. The West I grew up in and represented by my father as a Canadian diplomat is supposed to stand for world peace, democracy, human rights, free press, ending poverty, protecting the environment, etc. This is what I will revert to once the terrorist sponsoring Zionist or Khazarian beast is finally put down. Pentagon sources note the Big Three, China, Russia, and USA, are cooperating on North Korea, Syria, and Ukraine and Daesh to usher in the global currency reset. Part of this effort is a continued campaign to cut off the supply of drug money to the Zionist, i.e. Khazarian mafia. To this end, they say a CIA complex in Afghanistan was nuked to stop drugs trafficking. U.S. troops were also sent to Somalia for the first time since 1994 last week to stop Daesh and Israeli infiltration of East Africa, the Pentagon sources say. It is also worth noting that Khazarian efforts to keep up the fake Cold War with Russia are fading, and that the G7 refused to impose any sanctions on Russia despite Zionist-inspired efforts to make this happen. Instead, the fact that Easter came on April 16 for both Western and Orthodox Christianity is a sign a new age of peace and prosperity dawns. The key to this is to remove from Khazarian hands their last and biggest sword of powers, that being their control of the process of creating US dollars, yen, and euros out of thin air. Heinz Kissinger is the man with the master code that allowed this currency magic to take place, which is why he is the most hunted man on earth. If he is not killed or captured, then the system needs to be shut down and rebooted. Rest assured, the bad guys like Kissinger are all being taken down. George Soros, John Kerry, David Rockefeller, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, etc. are vanishing from public view. Now we have also had the first of a long-awaited arrest of U.S. government officials on charges of treason. In this case, former Hillary Clinton State Department employee Candace Marie Claiborne was indicted on treason charges, that is to say taking bribes from the Chinese to provide them with U.S. state secrets. Prosecutors say this will be the first of many who will be brought to justice. Removing the rot from the system is vital, but we also need work on fixing the planet. To this end, the White Dragon Society will hand-deliver a letter next week to a person, not Kissinger, who has the key to start a concrete, here-now, process of turning this planet into a paradise. We hope to hear a positive response. However, changing the direction a planet is moving in is like turning a supertanker around the sea. It has to be done in such a manner as not to tip the ship over. That is why we are not giving any specific date for an announcement. We are sure, though, that the good guys are winning and humanity will be liberated.